The defence is arguing that the officer's actions didn't cause George Floyd's death.
That's the key to the defence that we saw laid out this morning in the opening statements. What we heard from the defence is they're going to argue that it was George Floyd's drug use as well as his pre-existing medical conditions, including hypertension and cardiovascular issues, that saw him susceptible to what happened on that day. But the prosecution was very adamant in arguing that that's not the case, that it was the fact that the knee was on his neck for so long, and that's something that no reasonable person would be able to survive. Another overarching conversation was about the political and social reaction that came after that bystander video was published, and that they shouldn't be considering all of those factors when they're looking at the evidence of this case, which will have an extraordinary amount presented here at the courthouse in Minneapolis. Over 400 witnesses will be contributing to this, and tens of thousands of individual pieces of evidence will be considered. What we heard from the defence was the argument that he was reasonable force used by Derek Chauvin, that often in the course of police work, that reasonable force doesn't mean that it's not uncomfortable to watch, and they've said that they don't want to have the impression that there was any kind of inference from that, and they've also argued that Derek Chauvin acted within his training.
The evidence that you will see in this case during this trial, it is, I agree with counsel for the state, it is nothing more than that. There is no political or social cause in this courtroom. But the evidence is far greater than 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
Pete, one of the first witnesses has been one of the 911 dispatchers that sent police out to the scene of Cut Foods where George Floyd was killed. What we saw was this dispatcher say that she was watching on a security camera at the corner while she was taking other calls what was happening, and at one point she thought that the screen had frozen because Derek Chauvin was in the same position on George Floyd for so long. It was after she realised that she then called his supervisor to say that she thought something wasn't right.
There just something wasn't right. I don't know how to explain it. It was a gut instinct to tell me that now we can be concerned. I took that instinct and I called the sergeant.
Why did you call a sergeant?
The sergeant is the police officer's supervisor. Sergeants are usually always notified for use of force.
Pete, right now, as this court trial gets underway, there's over 2,000 National Guard on standby and about 1,000 local police officers in anticipation of what could be potential violence and looting, as we saw after the killing of George Floyd. Right now, even this court complex is completely barricaded off. There's very limited access, and that, of course, is due to the COVID-19 pandemic as well. But right around the city, stores are boarded up and people are really bracing for what could be a tumultuous few weeks.